and water table is very high in the ground, and so it's more humid, more water beneath ground, and doesn't take nearly as much watering. And this was part of the swampland that was cleared away. So we're going to the other rim of the mountains around. That's where we have Mount Gilboa. You can see it up ahead in the fog. And that's part of the chain of the central mountain range that begins at Hebron, comes right up through the country, which was where the Hebrews settled. And it drops to the Gore, that's that fissure in the Earth's surface 4,000 miles long, climbs to the Trans-Jordan, the east side of the Jordan Plateau, and the only not north-south is where those mountains now turn and go all the way out to Mount Carmel. We're headed now for Megiddo, which is right at the base of Mount Carmel, because the road we're on was the Via Maris. And it goes right straight through where Megiddo was protecting the intersection, but it was one of the spots of this break in the mountains, which was called the Valley of Iron, which had a necessity of making soldiers go one person like a file. And it was here where King Josiah was mortally wounded when he tried to stop the Egyptians from coming up and supporting the dying Assyrian Empire. But the Babylonian Empire. But so Megiddo was right near, so they could guard that spot. And it has, all of this is the battlefield of Armageddon, or Megiddo, named after that town. So we're headed there first now. And then this is the mountains that come from the central mountain range and going like a boomerang over to the Mediterranean Sea. Doing some road work here.
Well, there is a city that's known as Megiddo as well, but this is all, the plain itself is Megiddo as well.
So we'll be here one day.
I saw one prop plane back there just starting out with ideas as well.
It might be in this field too, but to say it's contained in this field because of airplanes and tanks and all of that, it's difficult to.
Incoming.
They're putting a very tight fabric to keep the water from coming up. This is a massive, it's going to, what, a 6-lane highway here. Because the traffic jams are so common. In Israel, there are so many cars, and they try to, they have a tax that's like 100%, value-added tax to try to keep people from buying cars. And yet you have to have cars for visitation and by tourism, and so they are constantly widening roads, repairing roads, and this is obviously one that's going to be doubling the amount of the highway. So to our right is Megiddo, about 2 o'clock. You can see the cut in the city where it was clear that the ancient people worshipped the sun, and we found a whole series of places where the sun god was worshipped, and it was cut through and all the way down to bedrock to find a series of synagogues or pagan worship temples that were found there, because this would be pointing towards the sun. And people tended to worship the moon, the sun, anything that they couldn't control but wanted to worship it because they needed it. Always the worship people choose is something beneath them, because we were created a little lower than God himself. Sometimes it's translated that angels, little lower than angels, but it's Elohim, and in this case I think it means a little lower than God. So everything people worship is beneath them. And it gives them a euphoric feeling if I can worship something beneath him. It's a way of controlling something you want to believe is above you. But it's self-worship in that case, not accepting the level of which we were created. So the Valley of Iron was right here, and this was always the restriction point for any armies. Now the road has widened it. But Megiddo is over to the right. You can see all of the palm trees. Those came from the laborers who were hired by the University of Chicago, and the leaders were sick with malaria fever, but they loved dates, and so they spit out the pits, and that's why palm trees are growing up there. You don't see any palm trees anywhere, but that's the excavation, and we're going to go up there. And the bone was broken half of a hole, and didn't know what it was at all. And so it was published, and with digging, you can never let your digging get ahead of publishing. That's why the season is only 6 to 8 weeks in the summer, because publishing must come immediately, because Dr. Joseph Freed from she's turned it on now. I'll call that.
From the 21st century, El Megiddo takes us back to the dawn of human history. People first settled here 7,000 years ago, building their home in caves in the bedrock. Since then, for thousands of years, a central city existed here continually, experiencing all types of historic reversals. The city of Megiddo was destroyed 25 times by waves of conquerors, which surged over it and rebuilt it 25 times. The city's remains are found on the site's 25 levels, an eternal memorial to humanity's will to exist and an everlasting witness to the war and destruction accompanying human history. Perhaps that is the reason why Megiddo was chosen to serve as an eternal symbol of hope for the future. According to Christian tradition, right here the most important battle for man will take place in the last of days, the final battle. In the New Testament, the Apostle John predicts that at Megiddo, or as it is also known, Armageddon, the final battle to end all destruction and persecution will take place. The cruel wars which took place here during the thousands of years resulted from Megiddo's unique strategic location. It controls the most important part of the road running along the coast called Via Maris by the Romans, leading from Egypt in the south to Mesopotamia in the north. Whoever controlled the city controlled this central artery. Canaanite, Egyptian, Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian, and of course the kings of Israel led by Solomon and Ahab all fought over it and over the city, and they all left memorials to their power and glory in Megiddo. The city of Megiddo knew not only wars but cultural and spiritual development and the eternal longing of man for God. A prayer structure was discovered in the city from the Canaanite period, dating back to the year 5000 BCE. The people of the city prayed continually for thousands of years in the very same spot. 17 holy structures were built one on top of the other during various periods. The most impressive is a large round altar built of unhewn stone dated 2700 BCE. The city's name, Megiddo, appears in early written material from the 15th century BCE in documents of the Egyptian pharaoh Thutmose III, describing his military campaigns and conquests in the land of Israel. In a letter found at Tel El Amarna, dated in the 14th century BCE, the governor of Megiddo, Biridia, writes to his Egyptian king, I have heard the words of my king, my lord, my son, and I shall defend Megiddo, city of kings, day and night. A beautiful treasure of ivory pieces was found in one of the rooms in Viridia's palace, not far from the gate of the walled city. The Israelites reached Canaan after 40 years of wandering in the desert. After a quick conquest, Megiddo fell and became a part of the lands of the tribe of Manasseh. King David conquered the city at its 16th level, which had been built on the ruins of 15 previous layers. The city reached the height of its glory in the period of the Israelite kings Solomon and Ahab. This was the best fortified of all cities built by King Ahab, and he chose it to be one of the 3 seats of government in his kingdom. He continued to develop and build the city. Proof of this remains to this day. The great city gates, the most beautiful ever discovered. 2 stables for 450 of his horses. 2 palaces, in one of which lived the governor appointed by the king. The public granary, from which food for all the citizens was distributed. There were 2 sets of stairs, one for going up and one for going down. The arched roof that protected the grains from sun and rain caved in during the course of the years. The most impressive discovery, its sophistication and construction technique astounding to this day, is the waterworks built for the city by King Ahab. The city had a real problem. Its great walls protected it during siege, but its water sources were in a cave at the foot of the hill outside the walls. How would they get drinking water while the enemy besieged the city? The solution was obtained by means of complicated but effective technology. Inside the city, a shaft was dug. From its bottom, a horizontal tunnel, 30 meters long, was excavated in the direction of the spring and at the same height. From now on, the citizens of the city could utilize the water that flowed outside the city without leaving the safety of the walls. In order to conceal and to protect the water from enemies, the external entrance to the cave was blocked up and the wall camouflaged with rock and sand. Many kingdoms came and went in Megiddo. The kingdom of Israel was conquered by Assyria, and after them came the Persians. In the 4th century BCE, Megiddo was abandoned and never resettled. All that is left are the remains of 4,000 years of human settlement and the apocalyptic prophecies, mainly Christian, which have memorialized its name in human culture as the arena of the great battle in the last of days. That is why the historic meeting between the President of Israel and Pope Paul VI took place in 1964 here at Megiddo, known as Armageddon. For 2,000 years, not only Megiddo lay in ruins, but also the entire area. 2 more battles took place here in this century. The British General Allenby routed the Turkish army at the end of World War I. The British reinforced their rule in the country, and General Allenby was named Lord of Armageddon. 100 years ago, the valley surrounding the city, called the Jezreel Valley, was brought back to life when Jewish pioneers returned to revive the land. They built cities and kibbutzim round the remains of the past. During Israel's War of Independence in 1948, More battles took place here, which ended with the defeat of the Arab forces. At the end of the war, a kibbutz settled at the edge of the Tell, which took the historic name of the city, Megiddo. Its founders were survivors of the Holocaust who had come to find a new future alongside the historic remains. In the vicinity of the Tell, there are other interesting sites to visit, all under the auspices of the National Parks Authority, which is also responsible for Tell Megiddo. Beit Sha'arim and its archaeological discoveries, the synagogue found at Beit Alpha with its unique mosaic floor, the antiquities at Beit Sha'an now being excavated, Mayan Harod, and Gan HaShlosha. The National Parks Authorities wishes you a pleasant tour.
The wall would be 30 to 35 feet. They could shoot down. It was very difficult to conquer a city with a very strong wall. But that's the way up Solomon's level. This is the way up to Joshua's level. We had our breakfast every morning here. They always bring the breakfast out about 8:30, and then we have a 30-minute breakfast, then go back at it. The first period starts at 5 o'clock. We dig until 8 o'clock. Oh my, I should wait. You can only hear me if you're right behind me. Imagine the defenders up on top of that hill with a wall 30 to 35 feet tall, how difficult it would be to conquer them. And so Joshua, of course, when they bring a road up not to a gate, but alongside the Tell, so that you're exposed to those who would be shooting at you. Always the weak side is the gate. You always try to get through the gate because that's the penetratable part, even though there's a double gate. So none of this upper area existed when Joshua was here. It was all at a lower level. So this road takes us to Joshua's level. And prehistoric time, we found some chalcolithic jars over on the edge, and you'll see those well-dressed steps that I was talking about. We always start at 5 o'clock because you want to start with the peeping of light. We get here even before you dig to get all the tools out so that the moment it's light enough we dig. And we dig from 8 till 8 o'clock, from 5 till 8 o'clock, a 3-hour period. Breakfast is brought out. We ate here, these picnic tables, and we have a half an hour breakfast, and then we go back to work until 11:15, and then we have a 15-minute juice break, we call it. They have coffee or tea or some flavored water, and sometimes they even bring out popsicles to eat. And then we go back to work till 1, and at 1 it's getting too hot, but generally we dig now under fabric so that you don't get sunstroke. Early days they didn't use that. I remember digging out in Jerusalem all through the hot sun period, but it's too hot in the afternoon, and so 1 o'clock ends the day, and then we immediately go to eat, even though we haven't showered, and then afterwards we go immediately to clean the pottery, wash it all, and then we can take the shower, take a nap, and then we have a reading, pottery reading, with someone who knows pottery and can tell you from a broken piece what the whole pot looks like. But that's basically a day. So what we're going to do is follow Joshua's conquesting period. And he would have conquered it because there were 31 cities that are mentioned, and this is one. And not knowing how to run administration of a city, they had never lived in one, 40-year wilderness wandering, and grew up in that. So they conquered all of these big cities, and then they went back immediately, and they settled in tents and farming area and so on. Okay, let's go this way now. The well-dressed out-of-bedrock steps. Solomon's first gate was up here. It's all gone. And if a farmer was late getting in, the army's coming, you could see from a distance, they've got to close the first gate if somebody gets there before. So some late farmer who can't make it has a way of getting up around through the top and in between the two gates and can come in late into the city. But this goes back to Chalcolithic times. It's thought there was a water source probably down here, but they are well-dressed steps, and we know that there was a Chalcolithic, which is stone copperary. Chalk is copper. So that's way back in 4th millennium and later BC. So this is an earlier part of the dig. And the water is always the most important place where you build a city. You have to have a water source or you can't continue it. So that was used later by helping the late people get up into the city. That's simply a water course to make the water bypass it. That was done late.